Good morning, afternoon and evening all. This is Yorkie with episode 4 of my in-depth track guide series. This week we are going to be taking a look at the 2013 Bahrain International Circuit from Sakir in Bahrain. And as per usual, if you've seen the previous videos, you probably know the usual video format, and we're going to be jumping straight off into the breakdown. Okay, so you gain control of the car just before the final corner in this 2013 track. Basically just going to brake, take the corner as quickly as possible, get on the gas on the exit as soon as possible, start draining as much of the curves as you can all the way to the start finish line, open up the DRS at the detection point there, and we are just going to hang over to the left hand side of the track as we approach turn 1, maxing out on the throttle now as we get to the red and white curving on the left hand side. Our braking point is about 120 meters before the corner, and we're going to be shifting down from 7th gear all the way down into 1st. This is a heavy braking zone, so you need to be careful on front wheel locking. Also try and avoid the curb on the outside there, as running over that will increase the chances of a lock-up. So in the braking zone now, shifting all the way down into 1st gear, we're turning into the corner and we're looking for the bollard on the inside. We want to be hitting just the left-hand side of that at this apex point here on the curb. Your apex speed should be about 50 miles per hour, which equates to 80 kilometers per hour. Try and avoid taking too much of the curb if you can, as it can bounce the car and send it out a little bit wider than you want to. But you kind of want to sacrifice the exit to open up turn 2. So hanging towards the middle of the track, we're going to throw the car into turn 2 now. As you get into 3rd gear and come out the exit of turn 2, you should be full throttle. You're going to use about 20-30% of your curves as you come through turn 3 there. It's a shallow right hander and we're now approaching turn 4. Our braking point for this right-hander is at the 100-meter board. We're going to be shifting down from 6th or 7th gear down into 2nd. You can again use 1st gear if you wanted to, just for that little bit of extra acceleration and turning, but 2nd helps with stability. You want to be keeping as far left as possible throughout the braking zone just to try and open up the corner as much as possible. You want to try and stay off the curb on the outside there though, but as we turn into the car you're aiming for the bollard on the inside there once again. The bollards are very useful for pinpointing those apex points, and our apex is just to the left of that with 75 miles per hour and 120 kilometers per hour. Again, try not to take too much curb on the inside as it will bounce the car and send it further outside. So instead you kind of just want to brush the curb as you run through, unwind the wheel, let the car drift over to the left hand side of the track as we come into a very shallow turn 5, which is the left hander just here. Coming into turn 6 you want to lift off the throttle ever so slightly, just balance it about 80% throughout the duration of this corner. You should be running the curb on the inside. Your apex speed should be about 140 miles per hour, which equates to 255 kilometers per hour. You don't want to step too far over the curb though, as it can bounce the car even more and once again send it out wide. The curbs in this Bahrain track are relatively aggressive. So coming into turn 7 now, you basically just want to get a nice smooth transition between the two corners. You should be full throttle through this left hand and your apex speed should be about 145 miles per hour, which equates to 235 kilometers per hour. And once again you want to be running the curb on the inside, but don't take too much. As we come out through the corner, you basically just want to unwind the wheel. You let the car drift over to the right hand side, run the curb on the outside, but you want to bring it immediately back left, ready to open up turn 8. Our braking point is just after the skid marks on the floor there that you can see just to the left of the front left tyre. You should be braking from 5th gear all the way down into 1st. It's a relatively difficult braking zone as you have to do a little bit of trail braking towards the end. But try not to get that curb on the outside there as you turn the car in. You want to be aiming for, again, the bollard on the inside. Just to the left of that is our apex point. Our apex speed should be about 60 miles per hour, which equates to 95 kilometers per hour. You can take a little bit more curb on this one as the speed is that a little bit slower, so bouncing the car isn't too much of an issue, but try and avoid clipping that bollard. So coming out through the exit now, you basically just want to balance the throttle. Once you get the car straight, bring the throttle back in more, shift your brake bias into the rear, ready for turn 9 and 10. And as we come through turn 9, we're looking for our braking point again at the end of the skid marks here. It's about halfway through turn 9. We should be braking from about 5th gear all the way down into 1st. It's a relatively difficult braking zone, but that rear brake bias will help us to brake that a little bit harder and a little bit later without locking the front wheels. So doing exactly that, you want to bring the car over to the right hand side a little bit, you want to then chuck it in and aiming for the bollard on the inside. Our apex point is on the curb here. You should be about 60 miles per hour, which equates to 95 kilometers per hour. And you want to take a fair bit of curb on the inside here, but you don't want to clip the bollard on the inside. But as we come out through the exit, You want to unwind the wheel, bring the car over to the right hand side of the track. You should be balancing the throttle and slowly bringing it back up in as you get into second or third gear. It should be full throttle. Don't open your DRS immediately. Instead, wait until you got the traction down, and obviously drain your curves down to about 25% remaining. So after a short breather, we're coming up into turn 11. Your brake bias should be back into neutral position, and we're looking for our braking point just before the 50-meter board on the left hand side there. We're going to be shifting down from 7th gear down into 3rd. And you want to be trying to keep as far right as possible to try and open up this long sweeping left-hander. But coming into this braking zone now, we're going to be shifting down into 3rd gear. We're going to throw the car in. You're aiming to hook up the apex on the curb on the inside here. Your apex speed should be about 115 miles per hour, which equates to 185 kilometers per hour. And as you get to this point, you basically want to start bringing the throttle back in, just balancing it ever so slightly and starting to unwind the wheel as you're going to bring the car over to the right hand side of the track to carry as much speed through the corner as possible. So running the curb ever so slightly on the outside there. You're going to bring the car over to the left hand side to try and open up the long sweeping turn 12. Completely flat out through this, just clip the curb on the inside, try not to take too much. Bring the car back out over to the left hand side of the track to open up this turn 13. We're going to be shifting down from 6th gear down into 3rd. You can use 2nd to try and help generate that extra little bit of turning. But we're going to be trail braking pretty much throughout the entire duration of this braking zone, as it is constantly turning ever so slightly to the right. So doing exactly that, we're going to turn in. We're missing the apex ever so slightly here. You're aiming to get as close to the bollard on the inside there as much as possible. You ideally want to be clipping the curb, and your apex speed should be about 95 miles per hour, which equates to 150 kilometers per hour. Obviously I'm ever so slightly just shy of it here, but if you hit this up quite nicely, you should be getting the throttle back in at this point. So shifting up through the gears, run the curb on the outside, and you basically just want to keep the car over to the left hand side of the track, ready to open up the final corner. Braking point is just after the DRS detection point, roughly at the 100-meter board there. We're going to be shifting from 7th gear down into 2nd. It's a relatively short braking zone. You want to be relatively aggressive here as well to try and save as much time as possible, because it can quite easily be lost. So coming into the braking zone, we're keeping over to the left hand side of the track. As we get to the 50-meter board, we're going to throw the car in. You're aiming for the bollard on the inside. You're going to take a fair bit of curb, but obviously trying to avoid actually clipping that bollard, as they can also actually destroy the car once they glitch out. Your apex speed should be about 95 miles per hour, which equates to 150 kilometers per hour. And as you bounce over the curb, you want to be bringing the throttle back in, let the car drift out wide over to the left hand side of the track as we come into an almost non-existent turn 15 now. You should be completely flat out, drain the rest of the curves as you come towards the start finish line, open your DRS at that activation point, and then complete your lap at Bahrain. So we're now going to move on to the hot lap, which is exactly the same lap as that I used just there, just unedited with pure sound, so you can listen to my throttle and inputs and also get a general sense of the speed. So just on that rare occasion that you do experience rain on this track, we are going to take a look at the wet hot lap. Coming into the final corner now, you basically just want to take it the same way as you did in the dry, trying to maximise the speed through the exit. Obviously get the curves draining as soon as possible. As soon as you're in third gear, you should be full throttle, no DRS, and you basically just want to hang to the left hand side of the track as we approach turn 1. Our braking point is about 5 meters before the dry. It should be braking at the start of the red and white curbing and shifting down into first gear. Run the curb ever so slightly on the inside, try and sacrifice the exit ready for turn 2. Be very patient on the throttle throughout the duration of that corner. Don't go full throttle until you're through it and at least in third gear. Coming up to turn 4, our braking point is at the 100 meter board. Shifting down into first gear, trying to avoid the curb on the inside. Try and run out a little bit further on the exit as well. Try and maximise some of that speed. Coming into turn 6, should be balancing at about 60% throttle, ever so slightly lift through turn 7, and coming into turn 8, braking relatively hard. We actually missed the apex just there on the inside. Coming into turn 9 now, we should be again shifting the brake bias into the rear, braking slightly earlier than we did before, being very cautious. It's very easy to lock those brakes. Coming out through the exit, be very patient on the throttle. Don't start draining the curves until you've got the traction down. You should be draining your curves down to about 15-20%. Shift the brake bias back up into neutral as you come into turn 11 now. Take it in a very similar approach as you did. Can use a little bit further. Exit on the curb there. Try and maximise some of that speed as we come now into turn 13. Braking relatively hard and hooking out the corner a little bit better again, but just shy of the apex. Run the curb ever so slightly. Hang to the left hand side as we come back down towards the final corner of the track now. And you want to be braking at the DRS detection point. Coming into the corner, you want to avoid the curb on the inside ever so slightly. Just try and maximise some of that speed and drain the rest of the curves as we come down to the start finish line to complete a oddly wet lap of Bahrain. So coming into the final part of the video now, we're just going to take a look at the setups for both dry and wet. So starting with the aero, we're looking at a 4.5 for wing angles. With our brake bias, we're looking at a 48.52 with a high standard pressure and brake size. Our balance for the car is a 4 and a 2. Try and help with those long sweeping corners. And then we have a 1.1 and then a 4.4 for ride height and stiffness. Those are the gear ratios that I was using in miles per hour, and then again in kilometers per hour. And finally, looking at the toe and camber settings, full left on the camber, ever so slightly left on the rear, and then default toe settings. So taking a look at the wet now, ever so slightly more front wing angle, pretty much the same rear wing angle, same balance but a medium pressure rather than a high to avoid locking those brakes. Same balance again, a 4 and a 2. And then for our ride height, same ride height, ever so slightly softer front springs there. Those are the gear ratios that I was using in the wet. You could probably run at ever so slightly longer 7th gear, and those are the kilometers per hour. It was in miles per hour beforehand. And then a final look at the camber and toe settings, which are relatively similar to the dry. So that's going to conclude this video for the in-depth track guide for Bahrain. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Please give the video a rating. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. I shall hopefully see you soon, guys. Take care.